Hi, my name is Erin Ivey, and I'm the Executive Director for SpeakUp ReachOut. We work to reduce instances of suicide in Eagle County and help people affected by it address their pain. Through educational programs, peer groups, and partnerships, we bring the community members together and to learn and share their unique experiences. We know discussing suicide through storytelling has the power to heal. We've experienced it firsthand. Tonight, we will listen deeply to unique stories because we believe sharing experiences promotes healing. In August, a group of 20 people came together at the Eagle Vale Pavilion for a storytelling retreat where we learned the art of crafting a powerful story while sharing safe messaging. Connections were made, tears were shed, laughs were shared, and healing happened. It is my absolute honor to bring those stories to you tonight in hopes that you, the audience, will find connection, vulnerability, and know that you too are not alone.
Hi, my name is Julie Cadu, and I participated in the storytelling retreat that SpeakUp ReachOut held this August, and I'm here to share my story. So I grew up in Minnesota, and I had everything. I had new ski outfits, skis, we went on vacations, we had horses, a pool, and when I turned 17, I've never been a big fan of change, but my mom took me on a trip to visit a college, and while I was away on that trip, I became very anxious about going off to college, even though it wasn't happening for a year later. And I started to lose my appetite, I started to lose sleep, and by the time I got back to school, I had a really hard time concentrating, and my parents pulled me out of school for what they thought was going to be a few days, and it ended up becoming 5 months. And during that time, I was put on antidepressants, and they worked for a period of time, and then they didn't. So my parents didn't know what to do with me, so they put me in a hospital. And the first night I was in the hospital, I was taking cold turkey off the medications I was on, which these days we know is a no-no. And my depression that I was in went from worse to worser. And during that time, I was labeled bipolar, and to this day I still don't really know why, but that's the label they gave me, and so I was put on copious amounts of medication to get me out of the funk that I was in. And while I was in the hospital, we had this wonderful doctor, and she gave my family and myself all the hope that we ever could have wanted. She said, "Julie will get better. She will graduate from high school, she will go to college, she will get married one day, and she will have children." And I don't know how she knew that, but that was what we needed to hear, and she was exactly right. I graduated from high school, I went off to college the next fall, and had another little hiccup with a shorter stint in the hospital, and then eventually moved to the Vail Valley and met the love of my life, my husband Tom, and we have 2 children who are both in college now. And but I look back at my story that I went through, and it was like, why? Julie had everything growing up, and 2 parents, the love of 2 parents, and financial means, and I had some traumas growing up that I kept a secret. When I was 7, I had been molested by my male babysitter, and I kept that a secret from my mom and dad for 10 years. And then when I was 16, I was backpacking with a girlfriend in Colorado, and we were sexually assaulted. And I have no doubt that had we not been rescued, we would have been probably raped and left for dead. And I'm seeing now in my journey as an adult that trauma like that gets stored in our bodies. And I wrote a book I guess it came out in 2018. It's called Bipolar, BYE-Polar, and it's my own personal journey of resilience, power, and freedom. And while I was writing my book, I read a Brene Brown book called Daring Greatly, and in there she quotes James Pennebaker. He's a researcher, psychologist, and he said he had 2 different groups that he studied. One group who had been sexually abused and had shared it, and the other one who had been sexually abused and kept it a secret. And the impacts of the people who kept it a secret were far more substantial. And so his thing is, the act of not sharing or confiding in one person is almost more traumatic than the event itself. And so when I saw that, I was like, oh my gosh, the secret keeping and the hiding is really what probably made me so sick. And so over time, I learned to share my story. And I'll never forget, I had a healer who told me that everything that I went through with my mental health was really my superpower, and that I was meant to share anxiety and depression to demystify it. And I was in a program at the Vail Athletic Club at the time. This was probably in 2010. And it was the first time I ever had shared publicly that I had been labeled bipolar. And there was an event going on Vail Mountain, and it was evening, and all of a sudden fireworks went off in the room, or on the mountain, but it lit up the room. And I took that as a sign from God that I was meant to share my story. And after that, I would share on social media or with a friend. And so really, I've found a lot of freedom in sharing my story. And I've discovered too that these things happened to me in the past, but they don't define me. They actually give me my purpose. And so I'm just here to make a difference. And whether you're struggling or you know somebody who is, there is always hope. The pastor of my church says you can go 3 days without water, you can go 40 days without food, but you can't go a second without hope. And so there is always hope. There's so many resources out there. SpeakUp ReachOut has unbelievable amount of resources in the Vail Valley. And if you're not in the Vail Valley, there's access to support really wherever you are. So I'm Julie Cadu, and this is my story.
Hi, I'm Kelly. I took a storytelling retreat, and this is my story. I'm just a girl, equal parts adventure, equal parts calm, sunny disposition, seemingly had it all. Picture a woman, somewhat successful early in her career, steadily continues, happy home, happy puppy, my dream career. And I didn't want to tell another story about mental illness, but I ended up being lost. Circling central concerns, shame shoving them down, I woke up one day and realized I wasn't sure how to get help. I had a lot of wonderful people in my life that were my tribe that stuck with me. I found therapy and a treatment plan with meditation and some medications, which I was against, but ended up, helping some of the time. I know that darkness cannot exist where there is light. So fast forward through recovery, I met someone. It felt like finding a part of myself that I didn't know was missing, and wanted to stay strong for that. So I committed to my treatment plan. I stuck it out. Life is a privilege to be able to wake up for, and I wanted to show up for that and find balance with the symptoms I was experiencing. I had to do something more than battle the darkness. I wanted to contribute to elevating my vibrant mountain community and enjoy the life that I was lucky to wake up to. Everyone loves a good comeback story. I can't say that my story is the great ending, the happily ever after, but I had to do something then more than battle the darkness. So I fell truly, madly, deeply in art to help balance that. I didn't want to tell another story about mental illness, but it was something that I couldn't snap out of. until I got help. And my story is that I'm human.
My name is Steph, and this is my story. When I was in second grade, I started experiencing severe stomach problems. I went to my primary care doctor, and she came in, she sat down with me, and she asked me, if you go to Hawaii, are you going to feel better? As a second grader, I just was taken aback. This doctor didn't believe me that I was in pain. I thought doctors were supposed to believe you when you're in pain and help you. This was the first time that happened to me. For 13 years, it continued to happen to me. Everybody told me I was depressed, so I related depression as a bad thing, and that I couldn't have depression or else I would never get diagnosed. So, was I depressed? Of course. I was in chronic pain for 13 years. When I moved out to Colorado in 2012, I finally went and saw a GI doctor down in Denver, and he said, this is crazy that we're not finding anything on the outside. Let's go inside and look. After I woke up from that ERCP and he told me that I had pancreas divisium and chronic pancreatitis, I just remember crying and just being so thankful to have an answer. From there, we treated it for 2 years, and then I ended up having a transplant. I had my transplant in 2014 and 2 surgeries to follow that up. After these surgeries went away, all of a sudden I had to deal with all of my feelings. I started using alcohol to cope, and I was pushing away all depression, anxiety, everything that I could. Eventually, I went and saw a therapist, but I wasn't ready to be honest with her. I started using alcohol to cope. I used alcohol for about 2 to 3 years to cope with all of these feelings. So around 2016, my parents and the rest of my family started realizing that I was using alcohol to cope and that I needed help. So I went to a detox center, which I thought at that point my life was over. I thought that because I was now admitting that I had a problem with alcohol, I was going to have this giant scarlet letter on me for the rest of my life. That obviously wasn't true, but at the time that's how it felt. From the detox, I went straight to a rehab center and spent 2 weeks there. And then insurance decided that I was cured and that I could go home. Spoiler alert, I wasn't cured and I was not ready to go home. So then I ended up switching insurance and went back for a full 6-week stay. Unfortunately, that was not the end to my journey. I then went on to have more problems, and I just kept relapsing, and I thought I was going to be the person that never got sober because I just kept relapsing. Then I went to one last treatment center where I learned about different ways of recovery, and that's what got me into a meeting called the Smart Recovery meeting. Now, we didn't really actually use the Smart Recovery model during these meetings. This was more just a group of people who have struggled with alcohol or other substances, and we all got together to talk about what was going on in our lives currently and how we were learning to live without alcohol in our lives. This was so helpful to me. And then 2020 happened, and I decided to move back here to Eagle County. And when I got back here, I really didn't know anybody because all my friends had moved on and everything. But I was looking for a sober community. So I heard that there was a sober bike shop owner in the area, and one time my dad asked me to join him in to go to a bike clinic, I guess, and it was on suspension. Well, that was all in French to me because I had never known anything about bikes. As we were on our way home that night, he told me that Kyle was the sober bike shop owner. So I went back and I introduced myself and heard him out on what he was doing. He was hosting a sober/recovery bike ride, and I wanted a part of it. Now, I didn't know how to bike, but I wanted a part of this. So I went out and bought a mountain bike, and my very first ride was during this ride. From there, I fell in love with mountain biking and with the people that I met through this ride. And I found what I had in my Smart Recovery meetings in this bike ride. As I got to know Kyle, I was learning about what he was doing with SpeakUp ReachOut, and I wanted to do the same thing. So I became peer support, and I started my own group called Bitch and Stitch, which is where we all get together and we talk about what's going on in our lives, and we talk about whatever in a judgment-free space, and then we work on a simple craft that is then donated to charity. I then started working one-on-one with people, which is where I find that I can relate to people in what they're going through. Sharing my story through peer support is just as helpful for me as it is for the people that come to my Bitch and Stitch group. This is how I continue to keep my recovery strong in the act of helping others.
Hi, my name is Devon Sullivan, and I went to the storytelling retreat, and this is my story. So the first time that I really experienced or even thought about suicide was when I was 16 years old. And what's funny is because I had no experience before that whatsoever, like not through friends, not through family. And I remember one day sitting down at my little brown desk, and this wave of sadness just came over me. And then it wasn't just that, it was many more experiences where my emotions became so difficult for me to even control. And I remember in those moments, there wasn't really anybody I could talk to about it. I didn't have, my mom to talk to about things, or an adult or a friend. I was one of those kids that could never really seem to fit in, and I had people who I would talk to at school, but they were really only acquaintances. And so when I was in those moments, it was hard for me because I had gone through a lot of abuse in my childhood and bullying at school, and it got to a point to where I couldn't really take it anymore. And I started asking myself, why am I even alive? Why am I even in this world? And so I tried to take my own life at 16. And it continued. I remember leaving home at 18 with just a bag because I was just tired of it. And from age 16 to, I would say, 22, over the years, I have been hospitalized 7 times. And out of those 7 times, I tried to take my life 4 times. And I was just in this world. I was drifting, not knowing what to do. There wasn't really any talk about the future in my family. There wasn't even talk about college or trade school. And so when I was out in the world, I was just jumping around from place to place, state to state, just trying to keep it moving. And I didn't want to be in those thoughts anymore. I wanted to be in motion for as long as I can so I can go on without having to think about what happened to me. You know, as long as I'm moving, then everything's okay. And then, you know, slowly but surely things began to change, and I ended up coming to Colorado. And I wish I could say that my struggle with suicide and suicidal ideation came to an end, but, you know, that it'd be a lie. It didn't. At the beginning of the year, my term with AmeriCorps had come to an end, was coming to an end. And during these 2 years, I have been moving, but I have had a lot of time to sit back and think. And it was around my birthday, and everything was just becoming too much. And I attempted to take my own life again, but this time was a little bit different. There was this feeling that I had, the feeling of support. And because I would look around me and I would see people who genuinely cared, people who genuinely wanted to see me okay. And when they heard what happened to me, they called me. They did everything they could to support me, and I had never felt that in my life, ever. And inside of me was this will to fight. And that's what I did, and I do every day. It's not easy, you know, I mean, I struggle. I have to constantly pull myself out of it. I have to constantly do things that maybe I don't want to do. I go outside. I read a book. I feel the sunlight. I wave at other people, even if they don't know me. I reach out. I go to therapy. I do all these different things because there's this will in me to fight. And one of the biggest things that have helped me is writing. Because writing, it used to be an escapism. It used to be a way for me to escape the world, to immerse myself into these worlds that I created. And now it's about using this talent, this skill, to really do some introspective work on myself. And in doing so, I created these, or more specifically, I looked on these parts of myself that I really never looked on before. I have DJ, who represents my inner child. I have Wonder, who represents the inner wonder in my life. And Willow, who represents that self-love. And I created them because they're a part of me. They're not real to anybody else, but they're real to me. And I try every day to make the world a better place for them. In my mind, a better place for them to live in. And like I said, life's hard. But I refer to it as like you're walking into a room and there's tacks on the ground. And you don't know which tacks are up, you don't know which tacks are down. But you have to step out. And when you step out, you're gonna step on some sharp tacks. It's gonna hurt, it's gonna feel painful. Some people, they wanna give up, they wanna quit. But now me, I wanna keep going because at the end of that pain is something beautiful. I listened to this song, and it's such a beautiful song. It's called Mama. And in that song, there's a lyric that says, "Your darkest hour is only 60 minutes long." And I think it was the most beautiful thing that I ever heard because it's true. And it's true because everything ends. The good times and the bad times. Everything ends. And that's what I try to remind myself, that it doesn't last forever. And that's okay. And I think the difference between the 14-year-old me and 27-year-old me is that I'm willing to try. Even when I was down and I looked back at my life and I saw all the things that I've done over the past 2 years. And even though I made a couple steps back, I also made significant amount of progress. You know, I served 2 years. I served people other than myself. And I enjoyed that. I made so many memories, you know. I even got the courage to publish my own mental health works and put it in a book and release it into the world, which is something that I would have never done a couple years ago. You know, I'm doing so many different things in my life now. I got this email that I was even on the dean's list, which honestly, if I were to look back and tell my 14-year-old me, he'd probably laugh at me and probably kick me in the face and tell me that I'm lying. And then all of these different things that are happening in my life right now would not have happened had one of those attempts succeeded. And I think that's precious to me, because life is precious.
Hi, I'm Jen Schrader. I participated in the SpeakUp ReachOut storytelling retreat, and this is my story. It was April 21st, 2022. Mom, do something. The desperation in his eyes, the pleading in his voice, my mind immensely, incessantly racing. You're worthless, nobody needs you. You should just kill yourself. My eyes, pools of tears just streaming down my face. My breath, shallow and just almost non-existent. I looked over at my kids. My youngest was asleep, emotionally exhausted. And my eldest, just apologetic and beyond remorseful. I said, go get Martha, go get her. And I stepped outside into the darkness, into the cold, and I could feel my front porch, the wooden planks under my feet. I was barefoot. I had my phone in my hands. I was trembling, hands shaking. And then somewhat with hesitation, and still in a state of contemplation, I pressed 9, 1, 1, and the call went through. And from that moment on, I've promised myself I will make my healing a priority, my safety, my kids' safety a priority, and not look back. I'm a mom, and I'm a mama, and I'm free from that hell, and I will rise up for myself, for my kids, for my students. My community has been critical throughout our whole healing process. Bright Future Foundation, the CVC, EMDR therapy, and all of our therapists. I'm beyond grateful, and we couldn't have done it without them.
Hi, my name is Mari, and I attended the SpeakUp ReachOut storytelling retreat, and this is my story. It's a miracle that I am sitting in front of you today. It's a miracle that I turned 32 this year. There was a time when I didn't think that that would happen. If you had asked 13, 14, or even 16-year-old Mari, getting to age 20 seemed impossible. Every day I had a black rain cloud over my head that continuously poured rain. That rain cloud is depression. It started as early as 5th grade, wondering if the world would be better off without me, wondering who would miss me if I were gone, questioning everything about my existence. In middle school, it progressed to include self-harm and suicidal thoughts. I did not want to be on this earth anymore. I was ashamed and desperate, hiding my scars from those closest to me while simultaneously hoping, praying even, that someone, anyone, would notice. See, this is the thing about suicidal thoughts. From the moment we are born, we want to live. Wanting to end one's life is not natural. It goes against every fiber of our being. So subconsciously, we are looking for a way out. We're looking for a reason to live. I've been on this journey with depression for over 20 years, and I have to tell you, there was never a come to Jesus life-saving moment. It has been years of baby steps, years of choosing hope and choosing faith over fear, over death, and over doubt. I still have to make that choice, sometimes daily, choosing to believe that I have been created for a purpose and that I have a reason to live. Because of God's divine intervention and grace, I know that I have a reason to live, to tell you today that you matter, that your life matters, that the God of this universe loves you and has an incredible purpose for you that only you can fulfill, and that there are forces that will do anything to distract you from that purpose and that love. Psalm 139 says that we are fearfully and wonderfully made, that He wove us together in our mother's womb, and it also says that every day of our lives was written in His book before any one of them even took place. There's a nonprofit called Project Semicolon, and its focus is depression and suicide prevention. A semicolon is used when an author could have ended their sentence but chose not to, and the author is you, the sentence is your life. I would further that to say that God is the author of my story, and He is good. Where I wanted to write a period, He stayed my hand and wrote a semicolon instead. In 2019, I got my first tattoo, a semicolon, on my wrist where I used to harm myself, where I can see it every day to know that I have a purpose and my story isn't over. If you know someone you suspect is considering suicide, the best thing that you can do is to have a conversation with them and straight up ask them, are you thinking about suicide, or have you thought about ending your life? I know it's awkward, it's uncomfortable, the words stick in our mouth. But simply by asking this question, the probability that they will go through with it drops by 80%. 80%, simply by asking a question. When we ask that question, we are shining a light into their darkness. We are extending our hand to them. We are giving them permission to admit how they feel and to feel free from the weight of the chains of guilt and shame that those feelings bring. Then, refer them to professional help. All of us should feel empowered to start that conversation, but we shouldn't need to bear the weight of that conversation alone. Call the suicide prevention hotline. Call a local resource. Call someone. Please. I wouldn't be here today if someone didn't extend their hand to me. You have the power to shine a light into someone's darkness. Know that you matter. Carry that message to everyone that you meet. You matter, and your story isn't over.